Pardon my language, but since President Trump fired the FBI director last week, the left has lost its damn minds. I don't know a better way to put it. Look, just some headlines that I collected for you guys. We've got Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe saying Trump must be impeached. And if I read the story correctly, that's based on a tweet he read by somebody with 257 followers. Jonathan Chait said, the law can't stop Trump, only impeachment can. Keep in mind that the president is legally authorized to fire the FBI director who serves at his pleasure. Democratic Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey, he went on national TV to claim that a grand jury had been impaneled in New York to investigate Trump's Russia claim. And that's what the James Comey firing was all about, except there has been no grand jury impaneled or anything of the sort. Hi, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. This is your right angle on the insanity that's gone on in the last week, and we've got even more to dig into. Scott, when you read these headlines, when you read these articles, are you even surprised anymore? I mean, I'm not sure how to phrase this properly, because the impeachment talk is really unprecedented at this level, isn't it?
Well, and this early in the game as well. I would suppose, although I have not done a complete review of the history of unreasonable accusations that impeachment should happen. You know what? Perhaps what's most alarming about this is the fact that most of these people you're talking about have their roots in the profession of law. These people are allegedly, not all the pundits necessarily, but people who are in elected office. I mean, Congress is just chock full of lawyers. And you would think that people who had engaged in that profession would have a reverence for the law, for the Constitution, would therefore take care in how they express things, would understand the importance of words and their meanings and precision in their use. And yet they just sort of flip off these things, like who was the one guy who was saying something like, the law can't stop him, it'll have to be impeachment. Oh, really? Where do we find impeachment? Perhaps in the supreme law of the land, maybe? I don't know.
It's funny.
So, it sounds so pathetic. Now, I am not saying that there shouldn't be a prudent investigation of the facts, that there shouldn't be a careful analysis to make sure that things were done properly. I mean, that's okay with me. I don't mind a little hindsight looking back and saying, okay, there was an ongoing investigation and the timing looks uncomfortable at best, or at worst maybe, but let's tone it down a little bit and present ourselves as representatives of the people and as those who have a love for the law.
Well, and Scott, the thing that's really changed is, during 8 years of Obama's presidency, you did have impeachment talk, but it tended to bubble upwards from, the angry rabble. This is coming from the top down, from what are supposed to be, the smartest, best educated people on the left.
Yeah, and I never thought I would welcome, the day when I wish that people were trying to find out where the president was born.
Yeah, it's going to turn into that.
All right. Now, see, I feel comfortable supporting the president on these issues because, like Bill and Scott both, I came along reluctantly to Trump. I've been a critic. I've been a supporter, and I will continue to support him when I think he's right and criticize him when I think he's wrong. Bill, does the left have any credibility remaining when this is their opening salvo just 3 months into a 4, maybe 8-year administration?
I'll tell you what I'm reminded of. The left strikes me as, I've forgotten the name of the character, but in Scarface, where Tony and Manny confront the former crime boss with the palm trees in the background, and the guy's down on his knees and he'll saying, I'll give you anything. My house, you can have my house. $3 million. You'll never see me again. I promise I'll just leave. Please, Tony, don't shoot me. And then he says, Manolo, go shoot this piece of one. Why do I say that? Because desperate people will say anything. Desperate people fighting for their lives in the kind of distress that the Democratic Party's in now will say anything. And this Russia connection is their only lifeline, right? This is the only lifeboat in the ocean, and they're clinging to it just as hard as they possibly can. They can't accept any of this. He drives them absolutely nuts on a daily basis. And I had a friend who progressive friend I watch football with who said, let's not start celebrating too early. You know, this impeachment process might take a couple of years. And I thought, unless I'm missing something, the president appoints the attorney general, his boss. He appoints the national security advisors, appoints the director of the CIA, director of the NSA. He appoints all of these people. To me, the only question in this entire story, Steve, is why Comey was held on in the first place. He doesn't have the trust of the Democrats, and he doesn't have the trust of the Republicans. He says things, here's the thing. He looks and sounds like the FBI director. He really does. But then he'll say things like, if I were to think that the FBI had influenced the election in any way, I think I'd feel a little bit sick. That's a statement that a 6-year-old makes. How you can't expect a grown man to be that naive, surely. And from the beginning, when Comey made the first, look, I was on board with the guy until he got on stage, made a 1-hour prosecution of Hillary Clinton's multiple felonies, and then said, we don't recommend pressing charges. And I didn't even know at the time that the FBI director doesn't make that decision. He doesn't make the decision about whether or not to recommend charges. He simply says, hey, here's the evidence, and let Loretta Lynch be the one who betrays the Constitution. So I don't have any confidence in the guy. I never did. After that, and I don't think there's any there. They're going to stick to this Russian thing. It's going to be like the birth certificate issue, I guarantee you.
Well, I'm glad
they're never going to let it go.
I'm glad you mentioned the Russian things. That ties into what was the big breaking news on Monday night and again on Tuesday morning, and that is this story that the Washington Post ran that the president leaked top secret classified information to the Russians. And what it was a high-level talk between President Trump and the Russian foreign minister and a ton of people in the room, including National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, who went on the record last night to say that the president didn't reveal any methods or sources, so he didn't endanger anybody. He shared information with the Russian foreign minister in an effort to bring us and the Russians closer together in fighting ISIS in Syria, where we both have some vital interests there. Now, you can question the wisdom of sharing anything with the Russians. I know I certainly do, but you can't question the legality of it because the president can unclassify information at a whim. That's in the law. That is his power. And H.R. McMaster, full disclosure, he's Scott, what is he? A second cousin of yours?
Second cousin, yes.
Second cousin. H.R. McMaster made his reputation with the book Dereliction of Duty, which exposed stupid and careless politicians for costing us lives in Vietnam. That is McMaster's reputation. So when he says the president did nothing wrong, you can take it to the bank that the president did nothing wrong. And you know
Let me just say, I'm sorry. I thought you still were continuing with the question. I didn't realize you were on your close.
No, you jump in.
I didn't interrupt you.
That's the new format, and
I
I
want to jump in too.
But I'll tell you, what basically are we saying is the great crime here? For the first time, certainly in my memory, at the very least, going back to the Vietnam War, we now have American and Russian forces in the same theater striking the same targets, and the opportunity for error in a situation like that is very, very high. This is how big wars start, is over little incidents that get blown out of proportion. When you have a president of the United States and you have the top diplomat from the Russian Federation, and both of these sides are engaged in a hot, active shooting war in the same theater over the same cities and the same target, trying to provide some information that might what's the word I'm looking for?
De-escalate?
De-escalate the risk a little bit. Yeah, this to me seems perfectly reasonable. Perfectly reasonable.
And Steve, I think that there's You've got to believe some pretty nefarious stuff about a guy whose reputation was one of blunt speaking honesty. And I'm not talking about the president. I'm talking about the National Security Advisor, General McMaster. You've got to believe some pretty wicked stuff about him because he came out on Monday and said that the president did not reveal anything about sources and methods. So immediately the press parsed that statement and said, oh, well, all he didn't reveal was sources and methods. Wait, why is McMaster choosing his words so carefully? The next day, Tuesday, McMaster comes out and says, I was in the room. Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, was in the room. Dina Powell, the Deputy National Security Advisor, was in the room, and there were others in the room. And Powell and McMaster and Tillerson all agree that what the president said was wholly appropriate, and that there was nothing of the sort that was indicated in the Washington Post story. There was no risk to national security or anything. So you've got to, let's just be a sentient being here for a moment. You've got to either believe that H.R. McMaster suddenly became this unexpectedly big fat liar willing to do anything to keep his job in an administration that he doesn't believe in, or H.R. McMaster's telling the truth, and there was nothing inappropriate, and there was no risk to national security, and everything's fine.
You can't be reasonable about this. It's not a reasonable argument on the left. This is their lifeline. This is the only thing they have. The Titanic is going to the bottom for them, and they're holding on to the pennant, the little red, the white star flag at the end of it, trying to hold this ship up. It's the only thing they have. That's why it's not rational or reasonable.
So, Bill, are you saying this is just about keeping the base drummed up until next November, 2018?
I think even that is too intelligent and too rational for what is really going on. I think this is a fundamental primal desire to get in the lifeboat, which is we cannot tolerate the idea of Donald Trump being president, and anything that looks like we could use to impeach him, we're going to go in all the way, going to be pot committed on this thing. And I don't think there's anything reasonable about this at all, Steve. Nothing. I think it's a gigantic, enormous, emotional, gaping need.
All right, I think Bill summed that up better than I could. And Scott, did you want to add any last thoughts?
That's it.
All right, folks. I hope we have covered this last week's hot mess, and I can only conclude by saying, get used to it. We've got another 3 years and 9 months at a minimum of hot messes just like this one, and you can bet your right angle team is going to be here to put out some fires for you, and I hope you'll trust us with that job. Thanks again to the paying members of BillWhittle.com for making this possible. If you like what you see, click on over and become a member yourself. Thanks.